Hello. Thank you. I'm Gordon Davis. I thought this was going to be a panel discussion, but I've learned backstage that my job is simply to introduce people. So the 10-minute speech, you know, these things happen. But that's not bad news. That's good news because they are three remarkable people. As I said, my name is Gordon Davis. I was the Parks Commissioner of New York City long before most of you were born. Even before Henry Stern was Parks Commissioner, I was Parks Commissioner. I'm a board member of the Municipal Arts Society. And this brief, very brief, I don't know why it's so brief, panel or presentation, is about one of the most important topics that affects life and neighborhoods in New York City and everywhere else, which is our parks and, more broadly, the reclaiming of public spaces in New York City. Sort of to set the table a little bit, I was the Parks Commissioner from 1978 to 1983. And during that era, right at the end of the city's bankruptcy, the issue wasn't building new parks. The issue was what to do about existing parks and their fairly battered condition. So the reclaiming, this panel is about new parks, but then the issue was reclaiming old parks and trying to devise strategies and techniques and find leadership that could rescue Central Park, rebuild Prospect Park, figure out a strategy for both the social and physical and economic issues that face Bryant Park, what to do with 13 golf courses, the largest, in fact, the largest collection of open space land in the city parks system at that time. And the list goes on, Riverside Park, Forest Hill Park, Flushing Meadow Park. And I was reminded not too long ago when the Brooklyn Borough Commissioner of Parks, Julie Spiegel, retired and 1,000 people showed up for his retirement party, that in one of the parks you'll hear about today, that so much of what happened and began to happen during that period was the finding of people with immense vision, leadership, and commitment to figure out how to reclaim our then tattered public spaces. Julie Spiegel, who was there for 29 years, being just one of them. Betsy Barlow-Rogers, who was here, I think, yesterday, was another. Eloise Hirsch, who you'll hear from, was another. Tupper Thomas, who after 30 years as the Prospect Park Administrator, just retired this year, was another. But that is a way of setting perhaps the agenda for today's discussion, which is no longer so much about what to do with the existing park system, but how in the last 10, 15 years do you expand that system? How do you bring on new spaces to complement new neighborhoods or developing or redeveloping neighborhoods? And what kind of vision and techniques are responsible, can do that? And that's sort of the theme of the three speakers you will hear from, all of whom, as I said, are remarkable. All of whom are women. I was wondering when women took this over, but they apparently have. And the first of these speakers is Leslie Koch, who is the president of the Trust for Governor's Island, one of our newest new parks. It's 150 acres. How many of you have ever been to Governor's Island? Raise your hand. Okay, so that's good. How many of you been to Brooklyn Bridge Park, the new Brooklyn Bridge Park? That's good too. How many of you been to Freskills, landfill? Well, sooner or later you'll be there. In any event, moving right ahead, there's nothing more wonderful than riding a bike around Governor's Island on a sunny Sunday. It's a remarkable experience. There's nothing more wonderful than the Brooklyn Bridge Park, not only its view of the harbor, but its view of the most between and around the two bridges. And Freskills, when Eloise gets done, will be the largest of all of them. It'll be 2,200 acres, hopefully, and that is in the future. Let me first begin by introducing then Leslie Koch, who has been there from the beginning, turning Governor's Island into one of the most innovative public spaces in the city. She was previously the CEO of the Fund for Public Schools and spent a lot of time working at Microsoft. Now, how that relates, I'll let her explain. I have no idea. But so the first of the speakers will be Leslie Koch. Please give her a warm welcome.
Well, to surprise you, I'm not starting with an image of Governor's Island, but of course a park that Gordon knows a lot better, which is, this is the iconic image of Central Park. Because when we started thinking about the public space in Governor's Island, we really had to answer this fundamental question. If New York has Central Park, why do we need a new park on an island? And at the time when we started answering this in 2006, it's important to remember just not only how brilliant Olmsted's design is for Central Park, and the popularity, 35 million visitors in a year, is an incredible testimonial to that, but also how Central Park has really shaped our collective consciousness about what a park is about. So in this talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about how, in the last 4 years, as people have begun to use Governor's Island as a popular green space, how we've changed some of our collective notions about art and public spaces, bike riding, and even food. We started by answering the question, we have to transform this place. So for us, the park is the first phase in an overall economic development strategy. This is actually an image people may not have seen before of what the landfill looked like shortly after it was completed. But the reality is, as much as we all love Governor's Island, half of it is landfill and is not that dissimilar from other industrial landscapes. But what do we have that other industrial landscapes don't have? We have this incredible vantage point on the harbor. And back in 2006, when we started answering the question, what should this park be or what could it be, we started with these views, and these are deliberately views that we got from the internet of sort of the iconic images of New York. The difference is, for the many people in the room who have been out there, when you're standing on the edge of Governor's Island, the Statue of Liberty, the Staten Island Ferry, the Manhattan skyline, all are very different. So our premise was that what you see from Governor's Island is actually, quite frankly, more extraordinary than what you see on it. And that was the sort of guiding principle behind the Great Promenade, which is really the seminal idea of how we thought about the park and public space. And our other idea, and this is back in 2006, and you have to remember when I got there, there had been 8,000 visitors the summer before. Obviously, this is our ferry, so most people in 2006 defined this as our biggest challenge, right? You can only get to Governor's Island by ferry. But the other thing about taking that ferry, and today was gorgeous, is this sense of a journey away from the city and this notion that everyone there is on vacation. So back in 2006, we set the goals for thinking about the island off in the future as providing 2.5 hours of delight, a new connection to the Statue of Liberty, a sense of a vacation. And some of the ways in which that's already changed, first is we'll talk about bikes and surreys. Well, in Central Park, what are bikes and surreys? Well, they're obviously, I don't know how many of us have ever been in a horse-drawn carriage in Central Park. I never have. But also the images of bikes now are often lots of people riding very fast on roads, however brilliantly designed by Olmsted. They were not designed for bicycles. Well, bicycles have acquired a new meaning in the context of Governor's Island. First of all, they're not bikes and surreys, they're bike surreys. We actually required these from our concessionaire because we were trying to think of what are those unique experiences you can't do somewhere else. And for those of you who haven't been in a bike surrey, while it does require a bit of pedaling, I've never seen someone not smiling on one of these. We've also introduced the notion of bike and chat. You bike on Governor's Island and you chat with your friends. I didn't pick this image by accident. Biking is often a volatile topic in certain communities in New York, but not on Governor's Island. Everybody bikes and chats on Governor's Island. And biking has become sort of the critical activity here. Free Bike Fridays, people will come out and say, it's Free Bike Fridays again. We've had thousands of children learn how to ride a bike. And remember, as much as we've become this bike-friendly city, many people don't own a bicycle. So bike rental is not something for tourists, it's for lots and lots of New Yorkers. So biking has really, the sort of notion of what it means to ride a bike in New York City has really changed on Governor's Island. And you may notice, if you're looking closely in the image on the bottom, those are unicycles. We've been talking to the biking community about making biking even more fun, and we sort of took matters into our own hand by inviting some unicyclists out. This was the first New York Unicycle Festival, which took place on Governor's Island in September. Food and festivals. If I'd come here 2 years ago, I would never have used the word food in Governor's Island, because of course the image of food on Governor's Island was there isn't any. And our collective image, this was sort of archetypal food in New York City. Food has become something amazing on Governor's Island, and we've really become the locus for sort of the intersection of food and festivals. I am so amazed by the food culture in New York, really changing the notion of public space. So we've had tens of thousands of people eat pigs, Meatopia, Vendy Awards in the last season, but really the vibrancy of what's going on in all elements of the food culture is something that I think the city, this goes beyond food trucks tweeting throughout the city. It's really quite extraordinary. And even on Governor's Island, we've taken a little bit farther. This image on the top is from something where it was eating slowly as an art project, which is not the same as slow food for those of you who are food people. And then we've gotten a lot of attention for what's going on in the arts in Governor's Island. The Village Voice just this week gave us a nod out for being one of the best new theater venues in New York City, which is quite shocking because, of course, we don't have a theater. In the 19th century, of course, art in public spaces meant this, and I was going to put that incredible image of Alice in Wonderland from Central Park, but I didn't want anyone to think I was casting aspersions on it. But art really meant something very traditional. On Governor's Island, art means everything. There really aren't any definitions for what is art and what is not. Miniature golf, you can see that image, has been one of the great moments. This was part of a theater festival. Children, adults, we believe everyone should be creative and play. Of course, nighttime concerts, and one of the favorite images from our biannual now, Jazz Age lawn party. So the notion of kind of what it means to do arts in the public realm has really changed. And the New York Times wrote about this quite a bit in August, and it really is very profound. I think what's going on in Governor's Island, the vibrancy of young groups that come to us, groups I've never heard of, and they can put together an exhibition of 125 artists, self-curated in our old apartment buildings, all kinds of festivals that take place. We've had more than 24 arts groups just this past season. And again, what I think is really important as you think about New York as the cultural capital of the world, which I think we can rightly say we are, that a lot of what's happening in the art world outside of New York is happening in streets and public spaces, not happening inside the walls of theaters and museums. And we're really excited to be part of that and to really add to the cultural vibrancy of the city with that. So these notions of kind of what it meant to ride a bike, what it meant to eat food in public space, but I think most importantly, what it means to celebrate arts and culture is something that's really about this sort of new definition of what is a park and public space. I don't think Frederick Law Olmsted is turning over in his grave. I think he would be thrilled, but we're proud that even without an Olmsted design, we're part of that. And we don't have Frederick Olmsted, but we do have an extraordinary landscape architecture firm, West 8, based in Rotterdam, designing our park and public space. For those of you who haven't contributed to our process, just wanted to talk a little bit about how we've learned from our experience in the last 4 years. It was very important for us to involve the public in new ways. So if you haven't been to the island and done your homework when you came to visit, shame on you. Every year we have the opportunity for the public to participate with Post-it notes. And what's interesting is when we started this 2 years ago, we actually put up rubber stamps for kids. And what we realized is that if you let those of us older than 7 be creative, we actually respond. But importantly, we actually analyze all of these results. So this is just a sampling of this year's Post-it notes. But also importantly, what we've done is we've really learned from the experience. So Picnic Point has become a very popular spot in New York City. Everyone knows us for our hammocks. And that experience, of course, has fed into Hammock Grove, which is a new area in the park and public space, 9 acres with incredible tree plantings, shade. But what's interesting is, again, something as obvious as a hammock. What can we learn from a hammock? Well, there really wasn't another public space that had hammocks. And so what you learn is that if you're a 9-year-old boy, a hammock is something you dive into and you flip around. If you're a 9-year-old girl, you actually kind of, I hate to be sexist, but I've actually watched this, and you realize that most kids who grow up in the city have never seen a hammock before. So this kind of iconic image of what it means to be in an American backyard is something that's totally new for people. So our use of hammocks Hammock Grove, which we envisioned a couple of years ago, will expand dramatically as we build the park and public space, because we've learned a lot from how much people love and use hammocks, not just for taking a nap or reading a book, which is what I'd always used a hammock for. And then this is another image. I talked about the Great Promenade. This is where we started. Back in 2006, we had the insight that what would make this a great place was this notion of the 2.2 miles around, and many people thought we were insane. Many prominent people, in fact, said to me, "You're crazy." New York has plenty of promenades, and we have seen in the top, of course, that's just a typical day on Governor's Island, lots of people using it. But as you see in the bottom in West 8's vision, this becomes really an extraordinary, dramatic, and I say this not trivially, I really think will be the greatest walkway in North America. And we're working very hard on the schematic design. So for those of you who haven't seen the Park and Public Space Plan, it's everything we work on is on the web. So if you have a lot of color ink, you can download the full plan. If otherwise, it all lives on the web. But I just want to conclude by saying that one of the, I think a lot about Olmsted and Central Park all the time, just because it's, I think, the most brilliant public space in the world. And we've learned a lot from that, but we've learned, I think, even more from the now close to 750,000 people have used the island in the last couple of years, and what you've done to really bring the island back to life. So thank you.
So the people who are running this are now getting nervous because they're looking at their watch and figuring out, the time. We're running out of time, but we're not running out of time. Because the next person, because we're hijacking some of the time, that's why we're not running out of time. There's a theme in what she said, which becomes even more apparent, I think, when you consider the new Brooklyn Bridge Park, which is parks on the surface are green space, their activities, their leisure, their recreation. But one of the things they are, and always have been in New York, is a place of unfettered social integration. One of the great mysteries of Central Park from its very beginning is how people of all different classes and ethnic groups and colors and ages can come together in Central Park and get along, and then go back to their enclaves, or what might be considered enclaves, whether voluntary or involuntary. So parks have, and always have had in New York City, a role in the social integration of our peoples, and have been one of the great mixing places in the world. And that is one of the reasons New York has been such a dynamic place and such a remarkable forward place. Which brings us to Regina Meyer, who has, according to this, oversees everything at Brooklyn Bridge Park. And it's not an understatement to say that she does. This is one of the most remarkable new parks in New York City. And I will let her tell you all about it. It received the Municipal Art Society Annual Award. Before taking on this effort, Regina was at the Hudson Yards Development Corporation and the New York City Department of City Planning. So without further ado, Regina, where are you? There she is.
Thank you, Gordon. And thank you, Vin, and the entire MAS board for having me, and also highlighting public open space as a part of what makes a livable city. I think all of us agree that parks are one of our greatest assets in New York City, and I'm so proud to be working on this one. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's been like to build Brooklyn Bridge Park, its sustainable elements, and what's coming next. But you all know what we started with here, and this was Brooklyn, the famous Brooklyn Piers 1 through 6, which the Port Authority abandoned in the mid-'70s, really. And what this became was a phenomenal community grassroots effort to rebuild this waterfront. And it was the community first who understood the great value of this shoreline, its place in the harbor, and what it could be. And then, of course, this is the overall vision, which is really coming to life now, 1.3 miles along the Brooklyn waterfront from the Manhattan Bridge, which is in the bottom of the slide, to Atlantic Avenue. So today I'm going to talk about what the placemaking has been about, its sustainable elements, and what comes next. And this is the overall plan by Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates. They were first our master planners and our lead designers, landscape architects, really in charge of all of our great thinking, forward thinking in terms of sustainability as well. And one of the things that is so great about this plan is it really embraces the entire shoreline of the harbor in so many varied ways. And I think the thoughtfulness in which they brought to this is one of the things that's everlasting and enduring. We focused when we worked on the phasing plan on how to get it to the people quickest. And so that meant that we worked on Pier 1 and Pier 6 first. And that was really the natural way to get started because, as you all know, Pier 1 is right at the foot of Old Fulton Street at the alignment of the Brooklyn Bridge, and Pier 6 is at Atlantic Avenue. So getting people down, to the water as quickly as possible from the neighborhoods was really an important first step in our placemaking. So talking about Old Fulton Street, this is what it looked like only 2.5 years ago. This is Pier 1. And working so hard to make this the great park entrance. This was through demolition in the shadow of the Brooklyn Bridge. And then here this summer, seeing so many people come right down to Old Fulton Street, activate the park with so many different amenities, biking, sitting, strolling, taking in the views right at the entrance at Old Fulton Street. Here's our great lawns on Pier 1. Beautifully aligned to take in all the views. Of course, our wonderful harbor view lawn with these wonderful views, of course. And getting a sense of what the huge move of building Pier 1 is. This is the aerial shot from the harbor, and just so you can understand that this will change the harbor forever with this wonderful new topography. Here is Pier 6. This is Atlantic Avenue at the southern edge. And many of you know Atlantic Avenue is one of Brooklyn's most important thoroughfares throughout the borough, but it never obviously had a placemaking element at the harbor. And now, this is the promenade right there in that very location, bringing everybody right down to the waterfront, flanked by this incredible playground. It's almost 1.5 acres of children's magnificent spaces. This is Slide Mountain, Sandbox Village, Water Lab. And I think the one thing I'd say about Pier 6, going back to the Water Lab, is that given our wonderfully warm summer, this summer, we had children from all over the borough, and it really became this great destination playground that I think children found so memorable, which also meant that they took all their caregivers and parents and grandparents and cousins and visitors. So that was really a phenomenal way to start off the playground. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. The Greenway was our way to get north-south access on the site. And this really, building the Greenway this summer and opening it in August was our way to fulfill the community's dream of north-south access through the site. So it was very important to get the Greenway underway, and we not only built a portion of it to its final design, but also put in place an interim Greenway, working with DOT to get people up and down the north-south alignment as quickly as possible. But the other part of the placemaking is really the partnerships that have come with it. And we have worked so hard with all of the community groups who have worked and advocated for the park. This, obviously, the Brooklyn Bridge Park Conservancy has been working for over 15 years on the placemaking in the park. And the film series this summer, I think, was one of the most successful ever. Thousands of people every Thursday night. Here, the mayor is introducing Monsters and Aliens, which was really in 3D. A great evening. We welcomed The Big Lebowski, over 8,000 people on a Thursday night in Brooklyn. We welcomed the Metropolitan Opera. We exercised with the YMCA doing Zumba. This is hard, by the way. We also worked and bringing other established Brooklyn users to the park. This is the Waterfront Tug and Barge. We're an important partner for us on Pier 6. Again, just establishing other Brooklyn users at our park. And we started our not-for-profit boating program at the park this summer. using kayaks donated by the Conservancy and working with the Gowanus dredgers and the other established boating groups. Again, the theme is the same, just working through partnerships to get more activity on the site. And then, of course, we built our dock to Governor's Island, which proved to be a tremendous draw. Brooklynites knew that Atlantic Avenue was the right place to get to Governor's Island. It takes 3 minutes. So we built a dock, and Leslie's, over a third of her people come from this dock right here at Pier 6. I also want to talk about sustainability today. I know that's a part of this conference, and it's been a major portion of our thinking in terms of both design and management of the park. So I want to run through some of those items. In terms of stormwater management, it's our intention to collect as much rainwater as we can to irrigate our park. That obviously has the positive aspect of not letting the rainwater run off into the park, but saves us on our water bills. And here you could see the installation of the water retention tanks. And here you could see the beautiful visual amenity that comes along with that. And there's a beautiful set of water gardens on the eastern side of Pier 1 that collects the rainwater that leads to the tanks. These are beautifully in bloom right now in the fall, so I hope you can come visit. We reused a lot of salvage materials in building our park. One of our best intermodal stories is the topography on Pier 1 is built from the east side access fill. So the major connection of the Long Island Railroad from Sunnyside Yards into Grand Central, that is going along. And we trucked the east side access fill down the BQE, the 4 miles, to build the beautiful topography of Pier 1. We reused a lot of granite from the area. This is the granite from the Roosevelt Island Bridge connecting Queens to Roosevelt Island. And we carefully built our majestic granite steps on Pier 1. So that we would have never had this material available to us in terms of budget unless we were able to reuse it. This is what I call my custom furniture project of this project. The cold storage warehouse building needed to be demolished, so we carefully did so. And what we learned is that the wood inside the building was an extinct longleaf yellow pine from the Carolinas, very, very hard wood. And we were able to carefully collect it from the demolition, mill it in Greenpoint in 2 different local mills. And that wood is used throughout our park in all of our park benches. And I think that's a really great lesson for us in terms of looking for one of the most efficient reuses from the site. Also, everybody asks about our financing. We don't receive any public funds for our maintenance and operation. And so there are development sites approved as a part of our project. And as you know, One Brooklyn Bridge Park is the condominium in the old Watchtower printing plant, and that building has generated enough ground rent and pilot payment in lieu of taxes to maintain the park, keep it very clean, and provide security. I want to talk a little bit about what's coming next. Right now, I'm pleased to let you know that Pier 5 at the foot of Girolamo Street is under construction. So this is our first pile-supported pier project that's underway, and we hope to build. Did I just run? I think I missed a slide. Sorry. 3 regulation-sized soccer fields and this beautiful picnic peninsula at the foot of Girolamo Street. I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. We're also working right now to select reuse opportunities for the tobacco warehouse. This is a beautiful structure on our site that has potential for community and civic uses and educational uses. We've accepted the wonderful donation of Jane's Carousel to be installed at Empire Fulton Ferry portion of our park, and that will come with a beautiful Jean Nouvel designed pavilion. So that'll be something that'll be open next summer. So those are really what makes up Brooklyn Bridge Park. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of partnership, and great design, and I think that we have a lot to look forward to.
So that's our second new homestead. We have one more to go. I should mention a couple of things that are not really, there's not time to discuss, but as you look at these new ideas and these new parks, each of them has a new kind of legal structure, separate and apart from the traditional Parks Department of New York City. Each of them has a new kind of funding, separate and apart from the traditional New York City Parks Department funding. And each of them is built on partnerships that are delicate and complex, but as I said, that's a lot of what we don't have time to talk about, but has been instrumental into how these new parks come into being. Another facet that you've seen, of course, is landfill. The role of landfill in the building of New York City, and indeed of the building of many of our parks and the construction of many of our parks, is not to be underestimated. Governor's Island, Flushing Meadow Park, Battery Park City Promenade, all are examples of where, Riverside Park are all examples of where the expansion of Manhattan, for example, has created new parkland. With every success comes some problems. One of my favorite parks in New York for many years was the Empire Stores Park, where the tobacco warehouse is. It was run by the state. It was basically abandoned. It was not very well cared for. Nobody went there, but I went there, and it was wonderful. I was always alone, right at the foot of the Brooklyn Bridge, the greatest view in the world. Now I go there, hundreds of people. I can't get a place to park. I don't know a place to sit. Anyway, so be that as it may, the final presentation is by a colleague of mine from the Parks Department. She was a deputy commissioner there when I was there, Eloise Hirsch, and was behind many of the innovations that happened in the Parks Department during that period of the Koch years. She then went off to Pittsburgh and got recycled, where she was for many years and was the director of the Department of City Planning in Pittsburgh. Then she came back to New York, and now she is in charge of turning the 22 acres of landfill in Staten Island, the Fresh Kills, into a park. And there is a theme of rebirth about all that because, of course, after 9/11, Fresh Kills, it was in many of our, came to our attention publicly in many ways, but not the least of which is where the debris, much of the debris from the World Trade Center was taken. It's Eloise's job to take all of that, the history of the landfill that was there before and the size of the 22 acres, and somehow turn it into a major public park. She is a wonderful person, a great friend, and the third of our new homesteads, Eloise Hirsch.
Thanks. Whoa. Bouncing microphones. Can you hear me okay? If I could take this back, this is Fresh Kills. I want everybody to know. This is, I thank MAS for putting Fresh Kills right as the best example of reclaiming the public realm. So I'm really glad to have a chance to talk with you about this project, these 2,200 acres that was once the world's largest landfill and is now becoming one of the great teaching moments about sustainability. Let me just give you some context for size. Fresh Kills takes up 6% of Staten Island's land area. If you laid it end to end in Manhattan, it would go from the Battery to 26th Street. This aerial shot gives you an idea of what it looks like today. Fresh Kills went from a salt marsh and light industry location. Actually, linoleum was invented here. It went from a salt marsh to a Robert Moses plan, of course, for a residential community with neighboring industrial development, on what was planned, in fact promised, the Staten Islanders will tell you, to be 5 years of landfilling. Then it went from that promised plan to the destination for New York City's household waste for 50 years. This is what most people think of Fresh Kills when they hear the words. But actually, this is what it looks like today. It was closed finally in 2001, reopened, as Gordon said, to receive the World Trade Center materials. Its future at the closure, though, was unclear until Municipal Art Society stepped in. Everybody should know that Municipal Art Society played a key role in the fact that Fresh Kills is becoming and will become a park. The angel, in the guise of Kent Barwick, as usual, said to the city, you will never get this much open space again, and so you really need not to blow this opportunity. So there was, and he said that to Rudy Giuliani. So there was, in fact, an international design competition, which many of you may remember, which was won by Field Operations, the designers of the High Line, a 3-year planning process managed by Amanda Burden's planning department that yielded a draft master plan that celebrates the landscape and sets out site restoration principles that are guiding us as we begin to build this park. But what actually is the defining aspect of the site for doing any park building is the fact that it was a landfill. Every dot on this map represents a landfill gas wellhead. I'll show you a picture of those in a minute. The purple lines represent the leachate treatment system. Our landscape is sitting on top of millions of tons of garbage. And the systems and layers that are between the public and the former landfill are very complex. The city invested in state-of-the-art engineering, really, to meet every regulatory mandate. And there are many regulatory mandates. Everything the sanitation department does, and now everything the parks department does on this site, is heavily regulated by Department of Environmental Conservation in New York State. And so, in fact, we and sanitation are in a marriage for the next 30 years as we work to build this site out. So that's what's bubbling underneath these 4 big mountains. The 2 in the middle have been closed the longest, so their major settlement, as you might imagine, landfills settle at differing rates. Their major settlement has already occurred, so they're ready to be developed. The mayor has been hugely supportive of this project, and we have capital funds for our initial projects. But this is an expensive and complicated place to build. You'll notice all these project outlines look skinny. That's because DEC is requiring super clean and therefore really expensive soil wherever the public will step. And I don't mind that, so that everybody gets reassured about the safety of the place. But that is a major budget constraint we have. So with that budget constraint, we have to think strategically. We had 2 principles for the early projects. Do something good for the immediate neighborhoods, and do something that gets people way into the site so they can see its potential. So the first neighborhood project is at the north end of the site. We take a neighborhood park and playground, a kind of a typical chain link and asphalt playground that's been at the edge of the landfill for years, and Jim Corner's Field Operations turns it into a place that says something different is happening here. And also a place that will be the neighborhood entrance to the future development of the landfill. Groundbreaking is this Wednesday. You are all welcome. The second neighborhood project at the southern edge of the site is a series of soccer fields now under construction with a comfort station that is LEED certified, wind-powered, green-roofed, geothermal heated, so that like all the built facilities at Freshkills, we will be walking the walk of sustainable practices. So with our neighborhood projects planned and our strategy for our strategy for our first landfill projects was to get people either out to the water and get them on top of a mound. So the North Park project, which is our first on-landfill project, which has both the neighborhood entrance coming from that park and playground I just showed you, and this parking lot entrance, heads people out to the water with sustainable amenities along the way, passing by a tree nursery and a native plant founder seed farm whose presence in the landscape is giving the message of the land renewing itself as the public moves through it on their way to the water's edge. Our second on-landfill project that gets people up on top of a mound so that you can have the full experience of the expanse of the place is laid out here. Here's the site plan for yet another skinny but diverse project that anticipates a lot of active use. There'll be a high-speed bike lane, bike track, new programming facilities for all seasons, and lots of active recreation. And then, as a way to keep the project in the public's eye and also embody the ongoing repurposing mission of the project, We're using this huge digger that used to scoop the garbage out of the barges to hold a big sign announcing the park. So good. These 5 projects, all funded either in construction, awaiting permits, or in design. The largest is not more than 20 acres each. They start to define the design vocabulary. They start to, more importantly, define the values and the role of the site as an archetype for bringing very seriously compromised land back to a new public use. But if we only develop 60 to 75 acres of this site over the next 5 to 7 years, that'll be a lot. And so we have had to struggle with the challenges of building constituencies and making sustainable public use here inevitable. I have a fabulous, dedicated young staff, all of whom think that their mission right now is to make this inevitable. We all understand it's a 30-year build-out, but our energy is toward that goal. So very quickly, let me just run through some of the things that we're doing to animate the site and make it real to the public. This is a research station waiting to happen for the full range of sustainable initiatives that this site, really better than any other because of what it's been, can exemplify. We're already hatching, one of them is ornithological, already hatching 5 research projects. The site is already a renewable energy generator, since all of the landfill gas that the site makes is harvested, sold to National Grid, and heats 25,000 homes in Staten Island. There's a potential for wind and solar development here at a commercial scale, and research on other alternatives. We have an ongoing tour program that runs from April through November, an expanding series of specialized tours as different constituencies start to get access to the site. In fact, I know that Key to the City was mentioned yesterday, that Fresh Kills was a site for Key to the City, and it was terrific, actually. Hipsters from Brooklyn who had no idea where Staten Island was came so that they could check that thing off their list of Key to the City locations. But anyway, so we are off-site. We're developing programming designed, we hope, to make the park exist virtually, since it is still, except for our tours, a closed site until our first projects are completed. So we decided, actually, to take a page in a way from Leslie Koch's book and just open the door, albeit just for one day. So recently, we had an event on October 3rd that would take us beyond the virtual of the park, that would let the public come and experience what the park might be in the future. So with our partners at Sanitation, we opened the section of the site that will see the first development, hopefully starting construction in 2011, for a day of doing what you do in parks. And it was the sanitation guys actually loved it. They couldn't believe it. They are so used to thinking of it as the dump. And 2,000 people came and experienced it as a park. People came from other boroughs. And we had lots of activities that made it seem really benign. So for 5 hours on a beautiful fall Sunday, 2,000 people came, and Fresh Kills was a park. New Yorkers are curious and adventurous, and the site, which is the biggest landfill to park transformation in the country, possibly the world, is really, as I said at the beginning, a teachable moment about the opportunities to learn and the opportunities to contribute to the field of reclaiming very compromised land back to the public realm. So we are looking for partners. Please visit us on the web. Come see the site. Come see me. Bring money. I'm anxious to talk to anyone and everyone about the opportunities. Thanks.
Okay, that's it. We've eaten up some time, but I trust the next panel, which is going to be very exciting. Don't leave. Don't leave. Will forgive us for that. All 3 of these places raise the issue of accessibility. How do you get there? The one hardest to get to being, of course, in theory, Fresh Kills, but the others having their own issues of accessibility. But the history of New York City parks is, if you build it, they will come. And that's exactly what will happen here. So in the future, along with the names of Central Park and Prospect Park and Riverside Park, people will say in the same breath, the Brooklyn Bridge Park, Governor's Island, and Fresh Kills Park. We thank you very much.